Hey guys, welcome back to Erudite Magic. My name is Jeff. If you love talking about all things magic book related, you are absolutely in the right place. I appreciate you stopping by, so I hope you will click the like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our awesome content. I have two topics for you today. One is a book that is relatively new and fresh. The other is a bit more controversial. The book on today's agenda is none other than Ryan Schlutz, False Anchors. And the controversial topic is about value and magic books. You'll want to hear what we have to say. So, False Anchors. I have a little bit of a story to tell you about this because I got this book for free. I did not get it as a review copy, however I did receive it for free. And the way this happened was I follow Ryan Schlutz on his social media. You should too. He posts some interesting content. And one day he did a story. He was asking for the first word on a particular page number of Simon Lovell's book, Simon Says. I was home, I pulled the book, I found the word, I sent it to Ryan. And what do you know? I was a winner. So Ryan, I don't really know him. We met once before and he sent me the book because I did win this competition, but it was not sent to me so that I could review it. So I am reviewing it and I am very aware of the fact that I did receive it for free. And I want to talk about that a little bit later. So let's talk about the book itself for just a second. This is a relatively small book, comes in under just a little under 130 pages. It is actually a very beautiful book. The photographs are quite striking, and it reminds me a lot of some of the newer releases by Vanishing Ink, talking here about Distilled and The Boy Who Cried Magic. Lots of big photos, easy to follow along. There are plenty of what I'll call B-roll photos within the book that give it a little bit of character and just make it interesting and appealing to read. So what's the content of this book? It is 100% cards. That's not to say there aren't other props being used in the card magic, but it is 100% card magic, which is what Ryan Schlutz is known for, so it shouldn't come as any real surprise. What's interesting is that Ryan has made a name for himself in creating easy to do, let's not call it self-working, but along the semi-automatic line of thinking, easy to do card magic. And in fact, in this book, Ryan's whole premise was that he wanted to find magic that could be done seemingly completely hands-off. The idea of false anchors comes from the idea of Ryan's that he wanted to implant within the participants a false memory or a false anchor of a particular moment in the trick so that it would erase part of the memory, part of the method. All of the tricks and descriptions are clear, concise, and easy to perform. You're not going to require a lot of special gimmicks or extra things. Any of the effects that require something extra, you likely can either pick up from an office supply company, or you probably already have either with a deck that you bought or you just have it. I don't want to spoil too much, but in general, you're going to have almost everything that you need to perform everything in the book. I really like the mixture of tricks, effects, and mini essays that Ryan has put in the book. He gives you several methods, and some of my favorite moments in it are the utility devices he gives you. For example, he gives you a method to turn a standard card box into a two-way out box. That really got my juices going. I started to write down ideas in my journal. Remember the journal idea that I told you about? I started to write down a lot of ideas in my journal about how I could use this two-way out box. I think that if you have any experience in card magic, you too will think of a lot of ways to use this concept. I like the fact that Ryan seems like he's well read, he knows a lot of people, he seems like a very friendly guy from our limited interactions at a convention, and he takes an idea and he lets it ruminate and he continues to think about it, and he comes up with different concepts and different ideas to take it even further. I just mentioned the card box, the two-way out. There's also a version in here where someone can remove a card from a deck, put it in a box, and in effect, it immediately switches it out for a forced card. He's got tricks in here that are versions of Out of This World. he's got tricks in here that are like out of sight, out of mind. There are plenty of thought of cards or seemingly thought of cards that you can either predict or know and reveal what kind of card the spectator is merely thinking of. In fact, one of my favorite tricks in the book is, in effect, the participant is allowed to wash shuffle the cards on the table. Very fair. They're allowed to choose 8 to 10 cards to hold in their hand. They think of one of them, but before they've even done that, at the beginning of the trick, you've placed an envelope on the table with a prediction in it. After they have looked at their cards and thought of one, you reveal that the card in the envelope matches the one that they were merely thinking of. The method involved is very devious and extremely pleasing to someone like me who appreciates the mental aspect of the game. There's a good mixture of both close-up and what I'll call stand-up card magic. Some of this can be used for walk-around, other parts of it would be more appropriate for a magic lounge type setting. There are some neat controls, both for the top stock, bottom stock, finding out where a card is in a deck without actually having to know the card. There are a ton of really useful utility moves and some neat tricks that go along with those moves. Clearly, there's a lot of value in this book. And there's the rub. This is the part that's a little bit more controversial that I want to talk about. Let's talk for a second about book value. Let me preface this by saying that I am a businessman, I'm a CFO, a CPA, and I've worked with a sales and marketing team for a very long time, so I understand economics. I may not understand the book world specifically, but there's a lot that I do know about books from doing this channel. I've alluded to this in previous videos that the price is what you pay, value is what you get out of a book. It's really difficult to compare magic books for a variety of reasons. Many times they are interesting to different people for different reasons, and in magic, unlike a lot of other industries, you don't really know what you're getting until you pay for it. Which is why I hope that my channel provides a lot of value to you as a viewer so that you can make educated, erudite decisions about the magic books that you buy. All that said, False Anchors is retail price $75. We've talked in the past about how books have gone up in price and hamburgers aren't 10 cents anymore and all that. And there was a little bit of controversy about that, people posting and saying, well, we don't need to accept that and all that. So I understand this can be a hot button issue for a lot of us. Here's where I'm going with this. I think that $75 is a bit steep for this book. It's not that it's not worth that, because as I already mentioned, value is what you get out of it. So if you get one trick out of this that goes into your act and fits perfectly as a professional or as a part-time professional, then the $75 is certainly justified. $75 is going to be made up just like that if you actually perform for pay. However, due to the nature of this book, the fact that most of the items are semi-automatic or low sleight and high impact, I'm assuming that the majority of people looking at this book are going to be the inspired amateur. People who don't really do that many gigs for pay, but enjoy performing for friends, family, and coworkers often. Now, if you can afford the $75 for the book, trust me, I think it's a great book. However, we always have to look at value in a comparative market analysis. When we look at a comparative market analysis, the problem is that no book exists in a vacuum. There are always other books that you could spend your money on. And this is where I think that this book runs into some trouble at $75. There are a couple ways to look at this. One is, if you were to try to get a similar book, and I realize that in my reviews I probably need to start providing some alternatives to you for books that I review, that if you want something similar, but you don't want this book, what might you also look at? I'm going to start that now. Let's say you don't really want to spend $75, your threshold is slightly below that, or you'd like to feel like you're getting more tricks or more volume for your dollars, then I would say that you would have to look at the Semi-Automatic Card Trick series by Steve Beam. Semi-Automatic Card Tricks, Volume 12, you can see it right up here, is about 350 pages. So it is roughly 2 times the size of False Anchors. Size is not always indicative of the value that you get that we talked about. However, you're certainly going to get more for your dollars, at least more pages and probably more tricks for your dollar. A review of this book is coming, by the way. It retails for $65 from Mr. Beam's website, so it is $10 cheaper than False Anchors. They both came out around the same time here, 2019, 2020. So both are going to have newer material. If you're comfortable going older, a lot of these semi-automatic card trick books are still available from Mr. Beam for $50 or thereabouts. So really 2/3 of the cost of False Anchors. Now, let me be very clear and say that I'm not saying you shouldn't buy False Anchors. I think it's a great book, and if it's worth $75 to you, I think you should buy it. I'll put a link to it down below so that you can evaluate whether it's something that you want. Based on what I've seen from the feedback, a lot of people are disappointed with the size relative to the cost. Again, not to the value, but to the cost. Let me give you a slightly different look at this. Of course, if you're interested in this kind of book, you'd be interested in the semi-automatic card tricks. If you're interested in spending $75, the other thing that you have to compare it to is what else can you get for $75? And when I look at the market again, I'm looking here at David Regal's Interpreting Magic, which is a monster of a book, which is also $75. So I think that the market, and in particular book publishers, have to understand that their material doesn't exist in a vacuum. And of course, every publisher is perfectly free to choose whatever they want, as you are to choose what you buy. I don't think it makes it right just because a book is overpriced in your book to steal it or to try to obtain a copy illegally. I think that the appropriate thing to do is either 1, wait for a sale, 2, buy a used copy, or 3, just do without. We all have plenty of card magic, so it's not like you have to have these secrets. I think that they're good secrets, but you don't have to have them. Now again, in a comparative format here, when I look at a book like False Anchors, I think that the pictures, the artwork, the layout, it's clearly done by a younger professional who has a lot of experience in modern marketing and modern technology to make this a very enjoyable experience when you're consuming what's in the book. So it is more beautiful, can I say, than many of the older books like the Steve Beam semi-automatic card series. Nothing wrong with those, I'm just saying they're very different. It's never easy to compare things, and in this case it's also made a little bit more complicated by the fact that when you buy False Anchors, you're also getting a gimmick that allows you to do one of the tricks in the book that is unlike almost anything else that I've seen. So there is that consideration as well. Is it worth the extra cost? Again, that's going to be completely up to you. Let's talk for a minute about limited availability. Limited availability is nothing more than a marketing technique to induce scarcity into the equation. So you have a certain number of people who want to buy a book, and you have the price to offset that. So if it were free, you could give out an unlimited number of copies, right? If you raise the price, you have fewer people who want to buy it. Supply and demand, it's simple economics. Now, if you introduce scarcity into the equation and you say there's only 100 of these, everyone is scrambling to figure out whether they're going to be one of the first 100, and what it does is it increases the velocity that people make that decision. They decide, I better buy this now because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to get it. In theory, not only does it increase the velocity, it also increases the price, because if there are only 100 copies available, well, I'm willing to pay more. I understand this concept better when it comes to selling the performance rights to something that's very special. You probably don't want 600 people out there performing this on TV if David Copperfield's going to perform it. But for books, I don't know, that it feels a little bit gimmicky. Sorry for the use of that word. It feels a little gimmicky to say that it's going to be a limited run, especially if it's a book of card tricks. Again, I've worked with sales and marketing professionals for a very long time, so I'm not disparaging Ryan or the producers of the book. I get it. They would like to sell more books at a higher price, but it's going to be up to you to decide whether it really makes the book more valuable just because there's a limited run. I really want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts about limited run? Does it make you feel good and special for getting one of the books that has a limited release? Or does it make you feel a little bit reluctant to buy it because you feel that sensation of, you better act now. Let's have a respectful conversation about it. I'd like to hear from you down in the comments below about your thoughts about book value, book cost, and limited releases. In my mind, the right question is, what value are you going to get out of the book? If that value is higher than the cost, you should buy it. If it's not, you shouldn't. To kind of wrap all this up about the book, I do recommend it. I got it for free, and I feel very fortunate because it was on my list. I wasn't really ready to drop $75 on it. It was just something interesting because I think that Ryan is such a creative, interesting performer with a lot of really great thinking, and I was certainly not disappointed with any of that. I think that I would not have paid $75 for it. In my opinion, it's about a $40 book. But again, that's my opinion, and your mileage will vary. I think it's a good book. I think that if you can get it for less from the used market, I highly recommend that you pick it up. If you can win it, I recommend that even more. Regardless, I think you do need to look into Ryan's work, either through this book or one of his other many releases. He's got some brilliant thinking, and I think that we should support creators like him. However, if you're not really ready to drop $75 on a 130-page book, there are other recommendations that I made in this video. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, thank you for liking and sharing, telling your friends about this. It helps me to keep going when I see that people are getting value out of these videos. So if you are, thank you. You know it's true, I am an open book, so if there are questions that I did not address, please drop a comment down below or send me a message. I'd be happy to try to answer it. As always, keep reading.